Hey, we're at the west tip of Horn, and our village pump stopped working. We're sinking. Can y'all please come? We have a membership. Shut the fuck up!
The problem with a case like this is that once people think they hear something in a recording, the conversation changes completely. And that is exactly what happened here. A single emergency call from Horn Island has now become the center of a much louder debate. And if you have been following the Nolan Wells case, you already know why Bart Edmiston's name is suddenly everywhere again. Short disclaimer. This video discusses reported claims, public audio, and statements from the family, and it is not a final legal conclusion. Because what started as a boating emergency is now being treated online like a full confession by people who are listening for clues instead of waiting for facts. That is where the pressure is coming from. Bart Edmiston is not being dragged into the story because of a brand new witness or some hidden file suddenly uncovered. He is being pulled deeper into the fire because the leaked audio gave the internet a fresh target. And once that happened, the accusations started moving faster than the evidence. If you have been tracking this case closely, you already know the pattern. Something gets released, the audio gets replayed, people start debating every word in the background, and then the entire conversation shifts from what happened to who is lying. That is why this latest round of attention matters. The emergency call itself is not in dispute. Public reporting shows the call was made from a boat near Horn Island on July 4th. And the caller reported that the bilge pump had failed and that the boat was taking on water. That part is important because it grounds the story in something real. There was a distress call. There was panic. There was a boat emergency. Those facts are supported by the reporting. But the part that turned the whole case into a storm is not the call itself. It is the background audio people say they hear while the caller is trying to get help. Some listeners believe the recording sounds deeply suspicious. Others say it is too chaotic, too compressed, and too easy to misread if you already want it to support a theory. And that is where Bart Edmiston gets pulled into the center. According to the transcript and recent reporting, people online began attaching his name to what they think they hear in the background, and that quickly turned speculation into accusation. His family is now saying that is exactly the problem. They say Bart has been falsely linked to Nolan Wells' death through social media conspiracies, and public reporting says they flatly deny he killed Nolan, witnessed his death, or concealed anything about it. That denial matters because it changes the tone of the story. This is no longer just a case discussion about a missing teen and a distress call. It is also a legal and reputational fight, because once names get attached to the wrong claims, the consequences can spill way beyond the internet. That is why the family's response was so aggressive. They have retained attorney Russell Latino, and the family's public message is that they are not letting the accusations pass quietly. Reporting says they believe Bart has been doxxed, threatened, and unfairly turned into a public villain before the facts are fully settled. Now, if you have been deep in this case, the next piece is the timeline. That timeline is what keeps making this story difficult to let go of, because it does not just involve a call. It involves where the boat was, when it left, when it came back, and where Nolan Wells was during those hours. CBS reporting says GPS data from the Mississippi Department of Marine Resources tracked the boat's movement on July 4th. According to that reporting, the boat left around 9:56 a.m., reached Horn Island around 11:14 a.m., then later left the island around 4:31 p.m. That matters because it gives the emergency call a place in time. The same reporting says the boat was back at its original dock later in the evening and then moved again to another launch location before being transported overland. So the case is not just about one recording. It is about how that recording fits into the larger sequence of the day, and whether people are assigning meaning to the call that the timeline itself does not fully prove. That is why the debate keeps spinning. The audio may sound unsettling to some people, but unsettling is not the same thing as conclusive. If the call captures a real emergency, then the panic in the background may be exactly that. Panic. And if people are hearing names, commands, or accusations in a noisy recording, that still does not automatically make those interpretations fact. That is the line Bart's family is pushing back against. They are not only denying the allegations. They are also saying the internet has taken unclear audio and turned it into a narrative that is unfair, reckless, and dangerous. And to be fair, that is the danger in almost every viral true crime case. Once a clip starts circulating, viewers want certainty. They want villains. They want a clean answer. But this case still refuses to give one. What we know is that Nolan Wells went missing after the 4th of July boating trip to Horn Island. What we know is that the boat experienced a serious problem and a distress call was placed. What we also know is that new GPS reporting has continued to fill in the boat's movements. But not every question about Nolan's last known moments has been answered. That gap is what keeps viewers locked in. Because every time one part of the timeline becomes clearer, another part becomes more complicated. And in this latest wave of reporting, the complication is not just where the boat went. It is how quickly Bart Edmiston's name got linked to the worst possible interpretation of the audio. That is why the response from his family hit so hard. They are saying he has cooperated, that he has been wrongly accused, and that the online version of the story is not the same thing as evidence. And if you have been following this story from the beginning, that distinction is everything. Because there is a big difference between a recording that sounds troubling and a recording that actually proves a crime. That is the space where this case still lives. It is also why people keep replaying the same audio and looking for the next clue, even when the bigger picture still has not come into focus. Before we go deeper, make sure you subscribe and drop a comment with the location you are watching from, because I want to know how far this case has traveled and who is following it from different parts of the world. Now back to the part that keeps everybody debating. The call shows a boat in trouble. The reporting confirms the distress. The timeline shows the boat movement. But the audio fragments that people are arguing over still do not settle the final question of what happened to Nolan Wells after that day began. That is why the arguments online keep going in circles. Some people hear proof. Some people hear chaos. Some people hear panic. Some people hear a cover-up. But hearing something is not the same as proving it. And Bart Edmiston knows that better than anyone right now, because his name has become one of the main points of attack in a story that is still being pieced together. That attack has real consequences. The family says the accusations are false, that threats have intensified, and that legal action may follow for people spreading defamatory claims. Once a case reaches that stage, the conversation stops being just about curiosity. It becomes about damage, responsibility, and whether the public is willing to wait for verified facts before deciding who did what. And that is where this video has to stay grounded. We are not dealing with a clear, open and shut audio clip that explains everything. We are dealing with a real emergency call, a missing teen, a deadly outcome, and a social media storm that is trying to fill in every blank with certainty that the evidence may not support. That is why the Bart Edmiston response matters so much. Not because it answers every question, but because it shows how high the stakes have become for the people being pulled into the public version of this story. And if the goal is to understand why this case keeps pulling people back in, that is the answer. It is not just the tragedy. It is the uncertainty. It is the audio. It is the timeline. It is the accusation. It is the denial. And it is the fact that every new development seems to clarify one detail while opening two more questions. That is why the case is still alive online. That is why Bart's family is fighting back. And that is why people are still listening to that call like it contains the final missing piece. But until the evidence says more than the internet does, the story remains exactly where it has been. One of the most watched, most argued, and most unresolved cases in the conversation right now. This video is for commentary and discussion based on reported facts and public statements. It should not be treated as a final legal finding, and no one should be harassed or condemned based on speculation alone.